He's Metz. He's Tass. It's the Metzger Tassoul Show.
I don't think a school owner should be ashamed to make money with a school. That's a general statement, and I agree with you 100% that a school owner should not be ashamed to make money with a school unless a school owner is putting money over service and quality of martial arts, right? And unfortunately, we do have schools like that in this industry. And I think we have schools like that in the industry that some are conscious that they're doing that and some are not. But I also believe the bigger issue in our industry, for anybody that's tuning in and watching this, if we are okay, is school owners that believe making money in general is a sellout to the industry that they're in. Because I also believe that is the wrong answer as well. So I'd like to discuss this, and we'll get Tassoul back here in a second, but I'd like to discuss why can't you do both and why can't you have both? I don't think money should overrule martial arts instruction, and I don't think martial arts instruction should correlate with how much money or revenue you can make in your business if it is a martial arts business. What is this? Simone, I think it's divided as some schools want to only make money rather than teach the art and vice versa. That is correct as well. So listen, it's interesting, Simone. Listen, we can all agree, right? We can all agree that there are very good quality martial arts schools out there that produce high quality physical martial arts students. We also know there's some schools out there that do not provide high quality physical martial arts students, but they do provide the life skills of martial arts where people feel better about themselves, they feel more confident, they develop relationships within the school with other people, they bring more positivity to themselves, their lives, and their community. Is that worth the money in a martial arts school setting? You know, I'd be curious because most of the time, oh, yep, Mr. Tassoul is getting right back. Most of the time, we in the industry as a whole, if a school is making good money and they go to a competition and we see that their students don't look as good as other students, or you might look at them and say, oh my gosh, look at these black belts. They're as good as one of my blue belts or one of my green belts. Automatically, if they're making money, we deem them as a McDojo or as a school that is a sellout. And that could be accurate, depending on how you determine what values and services a martial arts school should be giving. Now, in a perfect world, I think we should try to provide high quality physical martial arts, hard training. I mean, you know, coming up in the 80s, I think it was as a whole harder training. Now, some BJJ schools and MMA schools may come on here and they may beg to differ. But at the end of the day, there's a small percentage of people who compete or who fight that train in the martial arts. It's a very small percentage. Your average customer are people that just want to learn martial arts, get in shape, or kids that want focus, discipline, respect, or parents that want that for their kids. So if you can deliver that, but they're not high quality fighters, is that selling out? Number one. Can you have both? Or if you try to have both and make somebody who doesn't necessarily want to be a competitor or fighter, if you push that, are you losing students but staying true to your martial art? That if you can't handle it, find another school type thing. And where's the balance in that? And I'd love to know, you know, for anybody watching, your thoughts on that, because we tend to judge a book by its cover in general in this world, right? But there's layers to the onion. The other thing that I think is wrong is if you charge people money that you didn't disclose when they were enrolling in your school. Or if you give 70% of your curriculum and then say, well, you got to pay us more money or upgrade to get the other 30% or to get to black belt or to get this, I personally believe that's wrong. I believe that's a money grab. But I want everyone to hear this. If you're a martial arts school owner and you want to increase your revenue, I'm going to give you a golden nugget. It's not a secret, but it's a golden nugget. Offer anything you want at your school, and there's a value to everything you offer. However, there is a value to your curriculum. And what I mean by that is there is a value to your core art to get from white belt to black belt. And that is whatever you want it to be, whatever you want to charge for that. And if I join your school, I should be able to pay that amount of money and get to black belt. But there's other things that you might be able to teach me that has nothing to do with your core martial arts program. And that should be left as an option for me on whether or not I want to buy it. And if you can make money doing that by providing a value to the customer, and the customer says, I want to buy that for whatever value, but if I don't buy that, I could still get a black belt in this art, whatever that is, then I think sky's the limit. I think you should be able to offer different options for your customers. For example, it could be as basic as a private lesson. Well, I don't think anybody requires I won't say that. There might be some out there, but most martial arts schools do not require you to pay or take a private lesson in order to move up in ranks. But if I'm a customer and I want one-on-one attention twice a week for an hour, I should be able to pay you for that. And if I do pay you for that, in turn, your business is going to make more money and make more revenue. So in that sense, I don't think it's wrong to make money. But the question is money more of the focus than the martial art? And why is it that in any business in the world, if you're successful in your business, people think you're doing great and praise you? But in our industry, we tend to have a lot of people, a group, maybe a majority, that if you make money in the martial arts, you're selling out or it's bad. Does anybody have any opinions on that or any thoughts? Because I'd love to hear them. And Mr. Tassoul's still texting me here, trying to get on because he is in Connecticut right now having issues with his internet. But does anybody have any thoughts on that? And knowing this industry, I know a lot of people don't typically type in. So I'll continue to give my thoughts on this, but it makes me sad because I believe in the martial arts. I believe it makes a positive impact, but I don't know if everybody here knows or if you deal with a lot of school owners as a whole, but the majority of our industry suffers financially. The majority of our industry suffers financially. And I think it's the mentality, number one. Number two, I think it's ego and pride. Not in a bad way, but I think it's ego. For example, who am I to tell you how to run your martial arts school when you are the chief instructor? Or maybe you've had your school for 50 years and I've had my school for 30 years. Who am I to tell you how to run your school in your mind, right? Or if I'm a karate or taekwondo guy and you run an MMA gym, well, who am I to tell you how to run your MMA gym? How would I know that? Well, I always say this, it's not what you know that holds you back. It's what you don't know that holds you back. And, I like to, especially in the MMA world and the BJJ world, because it's also with Taekwondo, Kung Fu, Krav Maga, every martial arts style. There's always somebody in a style that feels that their business is different. But it's really prominent in the MMA world and in the BJJ world. They really feel like it's just different. It's just different. And yet, John Hackelman, who runs The Pit, is a very close friend of mine and has been working with us for almost 20 years, right? Matt Brown, who just retired from the UFC. He was a fighter, has his gym, came on board and is implementing business systems because he has a new focus. and his MMA gym is taking off and breaking records every month since coming on board. My point is some of these people open their minds and they realize maybe there's something more. Now, does that make them less of a martial artist? Does that make their teaching less of a quality instruction? And that is the thing that we got to try to get through to this industry is the mat has nothing to do with the front end office or the business side of things. Whatever you're doing now, keep doing it. But there are systems on how to run a business, just like there are systems on how to teach your martial art. But it's always frustrating to see. All you got to do is go on social media and see how this industry that promotes, anti-bullying and confidence and praising, there's a lot of hate. There's a lot of bashing other people, especially if somebody puts out a form or puts out them doing martial arts. There's a lot of praise, but there's still a lot of bullying and bashing. And I just don't understand it. Mr. Johnson, is the focus on the art or the money a different in skill set or mindset? Is the focus on the art or the money a different in skill set or mindset? Well, first of all, it's mindset, right? It's mindset. But, in the question and in the title of this, the focus should be on both, guys. Why does it have to be one or the other? The focus should be on both. And we need to professionalize our industry. Difference. Gotcha. Difference. We need to professionalize this industry because there's still a sense of struggle. Does anybody on here, look, there's not a lot of people watching right now, but I want to ask, does anyone on here have staff members? That's question number one. And is there anybody on here that finds it very difficult to find staff members or keep staff members? Does anybody find it difficult to find or keep staff members? And okay, Mr. Alvarez, you have 7. and the number one, yes and yes, the number one challenge, and a challenge that will never go away in any business, is finding and keeping staff, right? Finding good staff. Now, the number one way, well, here's another one, yes and yes. Well, the number one way, right, to find good staff members is up through your own system, right? Hire from within. But I asked if anyone has staff members, right? What is this one? Funny you asked. I just hired one last night that honestly I can't afford. Yes, it's difficult to keep staff members, right? Well, here's the next question. The staff members that you have, did you offer them a job or a career? Now, can you answer that? Did you offer them a job or a career? And I'm curious to see, if you think about that, what did you offer these people, right? And if you offered them a career, then the next question is, well, how many people do you have that make a good salary? The reason why it's very hard, and by the way, in any industry, it's hard, but the reason why it's difficult to find staff members is because the majority of the owners are struggling. And how many of you have had kids come up that became teenagers that you were thinking, man, I can't wait. I want to hire them. I want to bring them on just to see them go off to college, to go into a degree, to find something in life, and you lose them because they go to college. A lot of people go to college because they have a passion and a focus or a desire to go into a specific field. But you would be surprised on how many people do it because they feel that is their ticket to a career in life, and they had no idea they can make a career in martial arts. And you got to be able to offer careers in the martial arts to people. And you won't find good people if they don't believe or see that there's a career path. And you can't offer a career unless you know how to make money in your martial arts school. That is the reality. You don't have to like it, but that is the reality, right? So Tass, welcome to the show. I'm sorry to interrupt your daily routine. We're about wrapping up. Is there any final thoughts you want to add, or?
Well, it'd be a typical Mets Tassoul Show. I mean, my face just wasn't there because you normally do all the talking anyway. So am I coming through more clear now?
Perfectly now, yes.
Oh, perfect. Good. Well, it was good seeing everybody.
Thank you, Tass. We'll see everybody. No, I'm kidding. Hey, here's what we're talking about. We're talking about, is money more important than martial arts? And you really got to focus on both. But in this industry, it seems like there's still a majority or a big group of people that bash martial arts schools that make money. And I talked about how you should have a core program. You shouldn't force people to pay you more money. You should disclose extra costs in the beginning. But then we got into staff, and I said, how many of you have staff, and how do you find it difficult to find staff and keep staff? And we're into the part here where the reason is because most people don't realize they can make a career in martial arts because the majority of owners are struggling. And if I see an owner struggling, how can I work for an owner that's struggling and think I can make a career here if the owner is struggling? So the reality is you got to know how to make money in your business. And it shouldn't have anything to do with the quality of instruction. But I think some people have this mental block. And then these are some of the things I'm popping up on some questions or comments here. Yeah, most are young. We know won't be, if you can see those tasks.
Yeah, yep, I can see that. Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, it's interesting. I think there's two ends of the spectrum on this, right? I think there's the very old school, I don't want to say old school martial artist, right? But maybe old school mentality. And maybe it's a business mentality as well, right? Like, and I'm gonna take this back to when my parents owned the grocery store industry, right? We lived in what appeared to be a pretty modest home from the street, looked like it was basically there's a ranch home, but it was a 3-story home with a walkout basement, a pool in the back. But from the road, you would never really know that, right? And that was done on purpose. But then they also had a lake home that they bought literally as a cottage, right? 50 years ago, and was a dive. And then back in the 90s, they started fixing the cottage up, and they had a grocery store that was 10 miles away from that. And someone had asked for a raise, and they said, oh, they won't give me a raise, but they can build this beautiful, lake home on the lake. So I think there's the point me saying is to bring this full circle is I think there's two ends of the spectrum. Number one, I think there's the end of the spectrum where, as a martial arts school owner, the fear maybe is, well, I don't want to come in a brand new vehicle, or I don't want to, quote unquote, maybe show off some of the material things that I have. But I think there's the other end of the spectrum, which is we don't have the resources to even have the options to have some of those things. And so though we may be a leader potentially philosophically or from in the art of martial arts or the skills that we teach, I don't know that and I'm treading on thin water, on thin ice when I say this, but sometimes we don't create the visual or the picture of what the quote unquote American dream is for someone to want to be able to do this as a career, because they look at like, well, they drive this old car. Not that there's anything wrong with that, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're looking for inspiration and what you want to do in a career and what's going to take you to and get you the things that you want, where you want to get to in life, I just don't, if you those two pictures side by side of, hey, here's someone who's perceived to be broke and this and that and everything else, and here who's perceived to have money, taking everything else away because we know that someone could be strung out and maxed out on debt and the other person could be very wealthy. I get all of that. But I'm just saying from a perception standpoint, what is it that you would want to do? And I don't know that there's an attraction to that, right? There can be for some people, right? But I think you have to put yourself in a position where there's an attraction to what it is that you're doing, and that not only are you influencing and helping people become the best versions of themselves, but you're leading by example and being the best version of yourself, and at least have the options to do that, right? I remember a mentor a long time ago said, look, if you're going to ride a bike to work, it's fine, but just make sure it's a nice bike. It was one of those comments, which made a lot of sense. So I think, there's that piece of it. But I also strongly believe that the reason that people say these things, martial arts school owners specifically, is because they don't have the option and they haven't figured out a way to be able to generate the revenue in their school. And there's this paradox that may exist in their mind. They're fighting with themselves on, but if I make more money, then I'm really not honoring the art. And those two things, they can coexist. You can make a great living and you can teach great martial artists and great martial arts, right? It's totally up to you what you want to do, and then be able to have options. And by the way, you don't have to go buy I'm not saying that, beautiful car and a beautiful home, but there's something that you need to do to inspire the people that are there with you and that want to potentially have a career, to show them there's an option. And by the way, that might just be having, for example, right? We have the pathway to success. That might just be showing them what a pathway is. And maybe that's visually on paper for them so that they understand this is where you can get to, so they know that there is a future for them. It doesn't have to be the material things that you have, right? But if you don't, and most people do not have a pathway, right? We know that because we didn't have one for years, and now we do, and we can show people on where they are and where they want to go. And what was interesting is when people start seeing that you hire and you have full-time people and then you're hiring part-time people. Well, now you start to get their attention because they're like, oh, this is a place that not only can I potentially get a job, that I can have a career. And I think that's a great place to start, is, looking at how can you create a pathway and what's the vision? You got to create that vision for everybody. If the vision's big enough to house more people, right? If the vision is I want to teach martial arts until I pass away, have a heart attack in my backyard, because I had an instructor that's exactly what happened, and have 50 students, that's cool if that's your vision, but it's hard to share, and it's hard to get anybody else to come along for that vision other than just students, because there's not enough room for people to be in that vision with you, right? So I think maybe vision casting, find out what it is that you want to accomplish. And I think for most of us, when we talk to people on the phone, we ask them, well, what do you want to accomplish? What's your goal? Well, I want to enroll more students. Well, why? Right? And then we get through I think the intent of the answer is, right, that they want to impact more lives. And I genuinely believe that. But then we dive into a deeper thing, which is because more students equate to more money. But the reason that we're trying to get from point A to point B is because we want to impact more lives. Well, if we want to do that, do you want to impact 10 lives, 100 lives, 1,000 lives, 10,000 lives? And the more you want to impact, the more, I think it was Zig, right, that said this, Zig Ziglar, the more you can give people what they want, the more you're going to get in return. So, to some people, I'd say stop being selfish and stop teaching 50 or 100 people and try and go out and teach 500 people, and then see what happens to you and see what happens to people around you.
Now, here's what people would say to that, right? I don't want the headaches of 500 people. If you have the right systems, you won't have the headaches. You won't. And then also on gold medal here, initially offered a job, but casted a vision to have a career, but they chose not to be part of the vision. Well, there could be a million reasons why, right? But we got to do our job to really show the clear vision, not just the vision we have in our head. And when Tass references a pathway, we have a corporate structure. We have a pathway on growth. And there's two things predominantly that matter to people. Three things that predominantly matter to people, especially staff members, but all people, even owners, right? And that is, and I'm not saying it in order, but recognition. People want to be recognized for their hard work, right? They want to be recognized. A lot of times as bosses or managers, we're always looking for what they did wrong and correcting the wrong on how we can do it better. But you got to look for the right and praise the right. So recognition. Financial. They want to know that they have a financial path, that they can make a real money or live comfortably in a career. And number three is a life-work balance, right? So when you cast a vision and you say to me, hey, you can make 100,000 plus a year with us. But if I believe I could do that, but I'm going to work until 9 o'clock at night every night for the rest of my life, I don't want to be part of that vision. I don't want to be part of it, because all you did was nail, one of the two real important things to me. Financial, but the life work balance is tough. In our company, you are going to work till 9 o'clock at night, but not forever. You can see how you can move up positionally, right? And for those of you who say, well, I don't understand, how can you do that? You can't do that if you only want to stay with one location. It's very difficult in one location. It's possible because we do have several people that are doing 1.3, 1.5, 1.7 million dollars a year with one location, and they have positions in that company where they can't afford to have an executive level opportunity for people as opposed to just an instructor or a program director or assistant instructors. They could have managers and they could have directors where you could have that, but that's rare in our industry still rare, right? So that the last thing I'll say is what Taz said as far as casting visions and bringing staff on or people, you can't do any of that until you know how to make money in your business. Whether you like that or not, you can fight it, you can make fun of it, you can bash it, but you can't do it until you can show that you know how to make money in your business.
Yeah, and listen, two things to that. Number one, you go back to those three things, right? And I would argue that money is probably number three on that. Now, it depends on the person, first of all, right? Because money may be first on the list for people, but the majority of people, and this is what I've been learning over the years too, right? Like, did this for years with students. Like, how do you deal with a class, whether it's kids, teens, even adults, where you have people doing behavior that you don't want, and you want to correct it, right? And some of you, maybe this is news for you, which should be great. You can go around and say, Johnny, you got to stand straight. Hey, hands at your sides, eyes forward. Billy, make sure mouth closed, pay attention. You can do that and have this negative context all class, every class, and try and fix everything and everyone that's wrong, right? This is a good life lesson. And sometimes we forget this in other aspects of our life. And I'm going to circle back to this. Or you can just find someone who's doing it the way you want and praise the heck out of them and watch how everybody else adjusts because they all want the recognition and they all want the praise. And when you go into class next time, you say, wow, look at Johnny. He's sitting so straight like a black belt. You're going to see every other kid. They're going to start sitting up straight, right? It's going to fix everybody just like that. It's more positive. You're recognizing somebody else, and everybody else now wants to get the same recognition. Well, isn't it interesting over the course of the years, right? Like with my own kids, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't follow that philosophy with my own kids where I do a praise, correct, praise, right? Because in the martial arts school, when you're dealing with people for 45 minutes at a time, twice a week, it's a pretty easy thing to do. But when you're dealing with your own kids 24/7, that's not always the easiest thing to do. So I need to still, right? And did need to work on that and be better at that. But you know where it really comes into play? With your team. And so often we come in and we point out, and you said this, right? But this maybe will sink in a little bit differently, is we point out everything that they're not doing correctly, and it becomes this negative vibe. And usually it becomes the same 3 or 4 items, right? Hey, how are we doing enrollments? Did you guys make lead calls? How many upgrades do we have? Where are we at for revenue? That's pretty much the only conversation that you're going to end up having in your school or it's going to be something tied back to that. Well, that gets really old for people really fast. But if you start to praise people, and you can't always look for the results to praise because results may not be there right away, right? So instead you have to praise either the effort or you have to praise the process. And I would argue that when you start to do that, public praise, right, in front of people, whether you have one team member or 10 or 20, it doesn't matter, and you do that in front of everybody, everybody's going to rise up to the next level. It's going to anchor in that behavior for that particular person, and they're going to want to do more of it, and it's going to pull everybody else up to that next. Typically, it's going to pull everybody else up to that next level. And then it's interesting what happens that when you start to do that sort of praise on a regular basis, guess what happens? The money starts to follow. The work-life balance starts to follow because we're constantly looking at the good, we're praising the good, and we're getting the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And if we need to tweak something that's not right, we've built up the emotional bank account where they've had all of these praises, and we just make a quick modification adjustment, and we modify, adjust, and we move forward. But I think that's where everybody really wins. And I know I'll say probably 20 years, 25 years, I just didn't do that part of it right. And as I do that part of it right and praise the behavior of our team, whether that's the process, the effort, the result, whatever I can find, genuinely, by the way, not superficially, not hyperbole, but genuinely, it really goes a long way with people. And you start to see how they really start to perform, and they do it because they want to now. And that's a key difference, I think, that happens. So anyway, food for thought, take it for what it's worth, but it seemed to do us well. I know and by the way, it took me a long time. I'm a little bit slow, but it took me a long time to figure out how everything was working in Orlando. I'm like, how can this operate this way? But if you've ever been there, everybody just has a really great time. Everyone's praised for the accomplishments and the efforts and the things I was talking about. But also they understand that there's a job that needs to be done. But when you have an environment of people that enjoy being there, everyone's going to produce more, right? Everyone produces more. You can go bang on their head every day about everything that's not happening, that's not right. And eventually you're just going to lose people because they're going to look for something else where, guess what? It's not even the money anymore. It's just, I'm not even being recognized. There's no work-life balance. It's constant negativity. Yeah, the money's okay, but everything else isn't aligned. So now I'm going to go look somewhere else. And this happens more than I have a lot of friends that this has happened in their careers. They've actually taken a job for less money or career for less money because of less stress, more work-life balance, and because of the negativity that previous career had. So again, food for thought, but it goes a long way.
Very common. And also,
I was just trying to make up for the time.
Well, there you go. We'll end on this note, but if you're a business owner and you want to scale your business and impact more lives and give some of your students an opportunity to have a career in martial arts and impact even more lives through them, you got to be willing to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. You got to be willing to sacrifice a little bit today to grow tomorrow. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, because most of us, getting into personal habits of the American people for the most part, right, is we live paycheck to paycheck. We have an income, and not many people have an extra 10 grand in their bank account to use if the money train stopped, or 5 grand even, right? We just need that money. So when we have to bring somebody on and we got to pay money, if we're the owner, that comes out of our profit. That's where the uncomfort level comes to take that step forward. And it's sacrifice and it's discipline, if that's what you want. And it's tough. I understand it's tough, but it works out in the end. And I was higher right. Go ahead.
It does. And by the way, I would say this. I would say most of you, I'm trying to remember the author now. You'll probably remember it. But I'll say most of you are sitting on acres of diamonds. You don't even realize it. Earl Nightingale, right? So if you ever go listen to Earl Nightingale, Acres of Diamonds, and listen to that story, right? You probably don't even realize it, and you're searching for things every place else, and you're sitting right on top of it. It just needs to be shown to you on how to do it. And that's an okay place to be. We've all been there. We were there because we tried it on our own and we failed miserably. And then if you were like me, you tried 300 different things and failed miserably until you finally got help, right? And you found out someone that did it better than you. And that's where we have to have some of that humble pie a little bit. If you want to take the, 1 step back to take 2 forward type thing, right? And this is what can happen. So, don't be afraid, right? Like I say this, don't be afraid. Even if you've been in business for 30 years and you've been doing the same 1 year of business for the last 30 years, that's not really 30 years experience. That's just repeating the same insanity of the same year over time, right? Whether it's us or anybody else, get help. This is an amazing, amazing industry. It really is. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better place to be, with not only recurring revenue, It's what everybody's trying to do. Car washes are trying to have you sign up for a monthly subscription so you can, wash your car unlimited times because they understand the power of recurring revenue. There's an ascension model, which yes, you should have upgrades, right? That are optional. You don't have to do them. There's a term that's associated. There's all of these wonderful things that we have that are built into the martial arts. And by the way, it's not a product. It's not a widget. It's not something that, people don't need. It's us delivering what people really want, which I think is for them or their children to be the best versions of themselves possible. And if that is what our goal and our mission is to create that, then yes, we should be paid for that, right? And you should figure out how to mine the acres of diamonds that you're on by delivering great service and delivering great products to the people around you and getting what you deserve, excuse me, and allow us to help you do that if that's what you want to do. But this industry for a lot of years has been compared a lot of times to health clubs, right? And the health club industry, if you know, the health club industry for a lot of years had a very bad rap because they would open and they would close just as fast. And that is this industry, right? It's been open known for the businesses to open and then close. And that's not what we want. That's not good for any of us. So if the martial arts school down the street closes and you think that's good for business because now you can get their students, first of all, I will tell you, you're probably not going to get a lot of their students. Number two, it's not good for business because it's a blanket statement like, well, I've seen martial arts schools open and close, so I don't know if I'm going to enroll or I don't know if I'm going to enroll my child, right? Our goal is we've got to be the rising tide that lifts all the boats. And that's really what Maya is trying to do. That's what Century's trying to do and partner with Maya with the 30,000 students in 30 days, right? Like that's the goal. That's the mission, is to lift everyone up to that next level. And so, if that resonates with you, we'd love to help and do what we can to do our part.
Come to Game Changers, everybody.
Come to Game Changers.
Come to Game Changers in October. See for yourself. Surround yourself with, positive, success-driven people. Come to the Game Changers event in Orlando. Search for Game Changers. Tess, you know what, Tess? Go ahead. Tell them where to find Game Changers.
Yeah, I'm sure. Q Brian Negron, please drop the link.
There you go. Thank you, Tess.
So I'm sure it'll pop up something. I have no idea. That wasn't a pitch for Game Changers.
October 25th and 26th. Game Changers. October 25th and 26th in Orlando. Yep. But I love them. I love the events. Every single time. I love hanging out with these people and being around these people. So, and we have a keynote speaker this year, Olympian Vince Pacente. So, anyway,
and I'm sure I can't wait to hear that story because I'm sure that was just a super easy path, to get to the Olympics and kind of like running martial arts school. Very, very simple, no problems, pretty easy.
Well, that's going to be my first argument with this gentleman. Running a martial arts school is a lot harder than making it to the Olympics.
That's right. That's right. Everybody has challenges. Everybody has them, right? And whether that's being an Olympic athlete or striving to get to the Olympics or running a successful business, it doesn't matter, right? They all take work. They all take discipline.
And they all went through struggles.
And they all went through struggles, right? We all went through struggles, and we'll talk more about that. But yeah, look, it's Game Changers for people that want to change their game. If you don't want to change your game, don't show up. Just keep doing what you've been doing. But then you don't. Here's the thing, right? Mr. Peterman teaches this in leadership, right? If there's a challenge, you have three options. You can either solve it, fix it, or tolerate it. So those are your options. So if you're going to keep doing the same thing and not make any adjustments, not try and solve it or fix it, then guess what? You can't complain about it. You just need to tolerate it. And that goes for anything. And I love that expression and because it forces you to think, do I just want to sit and tolerate it? If I am, then I can't complain about it. Right? If
get rid of it, fix it, or tolerate it.
That's it. Those are your options. And which one do you want to do? Right? And a lot of times we will we'll just tolerate, and then but you can't complain because people complain when they tolerate.
Can't bitch about it.
That's it. Go fix it. Go solve it. Right? It's not easy. It's not easy. But I think, I love that just because it compartmentalizes things. And when I'm thinking about like a challenge, what am I going to do? Am I going to fix it, solve it, or am I going to tolerate it, right? So those are your options. So Game Changers will help potentially fix it or solve it for you. I'm just telling you, right? That's what we're here for. That's what we do.
Well, thank you, everybody. Tass, thanks for joining us for the last 15 minutes. I appreciate that.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure.
It's always good to see you.
Hey, I don't have an IT guy. I had the guy from the hotel come up here and log me onto a faster Wi-Fi. So my apologies.
What did he put you in a utility closet? I'm looking behind your head.
Yeah, pretty much. He goes, go in here. Yeah, we have aluminum foil that goes out the top of the building and gets a way better reception. Yeah,
beautiful.
Starling.
All right, guys. Tass.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
All right. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate everybody. And I'm seriously look forward to seeing some new faces at Game Changer. I think it'd be amazing.
All right, man. We'll touch base.
All right. Sounds good, everybody.
Bye,
take care. Bye-bye.